Today, we look at the fact that Ubisoft and Wizards of the Coast seem to be fighting to be the worst company on the channel. And that's it, really. The two of them combined are more than enough information for your midweek update. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Cow's Opinion, where we go over all the latest, greatest, and sometimes dumbest news and events happening throughout the world of video games. And I give you my opinion. Don't get too mad, because it's a Cow's Opinion. It doesn't matter. It's a moo point. And I want to start off with something that we've been looking at very recently, as I am still coughing. I have cough drops, I have medicines, and feeling a lot better, but the cough may stay with us for a while, unfortunately. So we're just going to have to plow through it, guys. But as bad as I have it, I feel a lot worse for the Ubisoft employees, because recently, as we went over on the channel, the CEO gave Guillemot, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that name, being American and not European, had given a speech where he talked about the fact that Ubisoft has not had the best time recently. They've canceled many projects in the last couple of years. Their games have been criticized for being just open world and that's it. The UI, the user interface, everything looks the same. Off the top of my head, they were making a freaking military shooter, and everyone's like, it's just a knockoff of Call of Duty. Why, there's a next version of The Division, which isn't even out yet. There's Skull and Bones got delayed again. I know. Talk about vaporware. That's a whole video in itself. Apparently, there's some kind of agreement with the local government. I think it's in Thailand, excuse me. Where it's literally, even though it's been like in development hell for 12 years, they can't stop. So, the CEO tried to send an email to staff, which was he probably thought was to pump them up. And the quote is, "The ball is in your quote." That did not go the way he probably thought. In fact, it probably went about as bad, as this quote says, as one of these emails can get, doing everything from blaming workers for poor results to advocating for extra work. Now, you can go back and watch the recent video, but it talked about, I believe I vocalized it too. It sounded like a nice way of saying we're about to have layoffs. We're not going to replace people. You're going to have to do more work for the same amount of money. And as a result, the union Solidaires Informatique, which is kind of a cool name, even though I don't know what it means, but I can guess, which has members at Ubisoft's Paris office, has called for a strike. Now, the union is calling the strike to not only protest the CEO's dismissive comments, but they also want better pay and conditions and a 10% pay raise, as well as the implementation of a 4-day work week. So let's look at their statement, which is here on Twitter. But according to Guillemot, the ball is in our court, but the money stays in his pocket. In his latest statement, Mr. Guillemot announces a worrying future for Ubisoft. If the request to employees to be especially careful and strategic with your spending is ironic, considering the company's editorial strategy of the last few years, it is not funny. When Mr. CEO speaks of attrition and organization adjustments, it means staff reductions, discrete studio closures, salary cuts, disguised layoffs, etc. Let me first start by saying, mwah, chef's kiss, because whoever was in charge of writing this saw through the corporate BS and is beautifully playing off of it. On several occasions, Mr. CEO is trying to shift the blame once again onto the employees. He expects us to be mobilized, to give it our all, to be as efficient and lean as possible. These words mean other things: overtime, managerial pressure, burnout. Mr. CEO asks a lot of his employees, but without any compensation. Have salaries kept up with the high inflation of recent years? What about the implementation of the 4-day week? What has been put in place for the teams that come out of the productions exhausted, like those of Just Dance or Mario? And then they demand an immediate 10% increase for all salaries, regardless of annual increases. Big ask, but, shoot for the moon. To compensate for inflation, with the hundreds of millions of euros obtained from Tencent, there is money in the coffers of the employers. the improvement of working conditions, with in particular the implementation of the 4-day week, transparency on the evolution of the workforce, both local and global, and a strong commitment against disguised dismissals, and a condemnation of abusive managerial policies that push employees to resign. And because Mr. CEO and his clique only understand the relationship of power, Solidaires Informatique is calling on the employees of Ubi Paris to go on strike Friday, the 27th of January, from 2 to 6 p.m. That's pretty early in the U.S. when you account for time zones. It's still on that Friday, though. So I'd be kind of interested to see if that happens. Now, as we've said, again, in recent videos, and this article lets us know, next year, which is going to be from April through 2023 of March of 2024, because that's how Ubisoft does their fiscals, Ubisoft says they want to release Skull and Bones, finally, Avatar game, finally, Assassin's Creed Mirage, finally, and at least one additional unannounced big game. They're calling it the biggest pipeline in Ubisoft's history in that email, and that he thinks they'll share more in June at the E3 conference. But we've had, and this was from yesterday, and we have had an update. Because earlier today, from that article being dropped yesterday, Mr. CEO had a chance with his management team to address the employees. And he had to apologize for the terrible email that was linked. So, the meeting was just a week after today. Last week, the thing that started all of my coverage was when the publisher announced new cancellations, delays, and cost-cutting measures, and that ball's in your court to help them get the $3 billion company back on court. Now, I love this part because one of the most upvoted questions that he had to respond to at the meeting was, the ball is now in our court. For years, it has been in your court. So why did you mishandle the ball so badly that we, the workers, have to fix it for you? It was a very upvoted question on the list. And of course it was referencing that terrible quote that I took him to task for, and a lot of other people on Twitter, YouTube, gamers, and fans and developers are all saying, it's tone deaf, it's stupid, I don't know why you thought this was a good idea. So he opens by apologizing, saying, I heard your feedback, and I'm sorry this was perceived this way. So first of all, that's not an apology. I'm sorry you perceived it that way means you messed up, not me. So that's, right now, he's wrong. And he said, according to sources present who were not authorized to speak to the press, they don't trust this guy. They're leaking this stuff. When saying the ball is in your court to deliver on our quality lineup and time, I wanted to convey the idea that more than ever I need your talent and energy to make it happen. This is a collective journey that starts, of course, with myself and with the leadership team to create the conditions for all of us to succeed together. Now, of course, some people like that because it's not really a good apology, but, it is an apology. But a lot of people were not happy because they talked about how the hour-long affair was filled with industry buzzwords and business jargon and light on specifics. The CFO, Frederick Dugat, said they had to reduce costs and increase productivity, which goes back to layoffs and smaller teams and managerial pressure. Chief People Officer is one of those buzzwords. They look and really sound good, but they don't actually help you achieve anything. Anika Grant rejected the 4-day work weeks and said requested raises to keep up with inflation were off the table amid the current financial struggles. Nobody addressed the call for the strike at their Paris studio, which is probably good and the smartest thing they did in this meeting because nothing they can say is going to help them with that. He also remained vague about the potential for layoffs, saying it's not about doing more with less, but finding ways to do things differently across the company. Look, it's 2023 now, and last year was terrible for Ubisoft, and Kotaku has this nice written thing. Not just 2022. The last couple of years, Ubisoft's been taking it, just getting punched in the nuts when it comes to development stuff. They've got stuff trapped in development hell, can't get it done. Beyond Good and Evil 2 has been in development for like 14 years or something ridiculous like that. They haven't had any massive hits. They've had some great games. Mario and Rabbids, the first one was pretty good, but the second one didn't seem to find an audience. The Anno city building games are always, they do well, but they're not massive Call of Duty-like pillars that a major company needs. It appears, and it talks about several projects were delayed, trapped in development hell, or shipped and failed to find an audience. It appears that management is out of touch with games, saying that we need to adapt to an evolving industry. Why are we chasing trends instead of setting them? And it goes back even further as we talk about their terrible misadventure with things like NFTs and Google Stadia in 2021. And its recent race to ship multiple free-to-play spin-offs of existing franchises, and a crowded slate of battle royale and hero-based shooters like Hyperscape and Roller Champions, which are launched and can't find an audience. The Division Heartland has been announced forever ago and isn't coming out. And this is what I was talking about just a few minutes ago. Ghost Recon on Frontland just looked like a ripoff of Call of Duty Warzone with a couple of twists. And in fact, it did indeed play like a Call of Duty Warzone ripoff. And it was canned last summer with 3 other projects, leaving the developers unhappy and the Ghost Recon fans just confused. Because Ghost Recon is not a Call of Duty. Ghost Recon is a tactical, squad-based shooter. It's not about run and gun. It's about, moving strategically like a Special Forces squad. Now, the CEO talked about how they need to double down on core franchises like Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Tom Clancy games, such as Rainbow Six, whose potential the CEO has compared to Riot Games' Valorant. Yeah, Rainbow Six Siege is a great game, by the way. It's fun, everyone loves it. Some see it as a retreat not just from chasing trends, but experimentation as well. We need to acknowledge that the trends are for mega brands. When asked why the company doesn't pursue more varied, smaller games like Anno 1800, which is good. A big company needs both those big pillars and they need to have those more experimental games because your next big pillar is going to come from experimentation. The article also goes on to remind us that in recent years, all Ubisoft games just basically look the same. It's a open world blueprint that bleeds from franchise to franchise, and that is Far Cry looks like Ghost Recon, looks like freaking the Beyond Good and Evil 2, looks like Watch Dogs, looks like they all look the same, but we don't need 5 of the same game from the same studios. We need 5 different genres so we can have lots to play. Now they end the article and the conference that the article covers on. Talk about how that they're going to pivot people from the canceled projects to help ship their other stuff, like Assassin's Creed Mirage, and how they're also planning, along with that unannounced yet 4th game, that in the next fiscal year they expect Skull and Bones and Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora to finally come out. Ubisoft did not respond to request to comment. This was at my day job, I've been to good and bad meetings where management had to address things. This was terrible. And it starts with this right here. I heard your feedback, and I'm sorry that was perceived that way. There was only one way to perceive your email. We screwed up. We're having financial trouble, and now you guys got to dig us out of the hole. We also have the related story here. Beyond Good and Evil 2, still in development. It's been 14 years. At this point, is it ever coming out? I don't know. Is that the 4th game? I hope not. Because they're saying they want to launch Skull and Bones, Avatar, and Assassin's Creed. And all the 4 of them probably have the same open world, same look, doesn't matter. We don't care thing that Ubisoft has been accused of recently. But if you think Ubisoft's going to easily take worst gaming company this week, oh no. Wizards of the Coast wants you to hold its beer. Other story for today, guys. D&D leadership seems to finally be capitulating, but I don't know if you can quite believe that. As we've gone over on this channel, Wizards of the Coast just kind of nuked its own reputation from orbit for reasons that nobody understands. They have the Open Gaming License, the OGL, just to briefly cover it, in case you have been under a rock and haven't noticed anything, is what allows third-party and independent creators to make content for Dungeons & Dragons within their rule set. Recently, they hired a woman from Microsoft who has been talking about how under-monetized their games are, and the changes that people are seeing to Magic the Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons are not good. The new OGL, which they're now calling OGL 2.0, gave them ability to do things like, if they like your content, they can own it now because you made it in their system. That if you made a certain amount of revenues, you owe them a 20% cut. And that is off of your gross, not your net. So if you didn't even make 20% net, you're out of business as of today. Because you can't make content for Dungeons & Dragons anymore. Just really terrible decision after terrible decision. And now, its new executive producer, who is a former video game developer, Kyle Brink, has been issued an apology on behalf of his team and is possibly a scapegoat based on some of the YouTubers I've watched. We are sorry, and we got it wrong. So the draft is not... They said that it was just a draft. It's not a draft. I've looked into this a lot. They not only sent contracts to be signed with it, which you cannot send a contract with a draft, means that they liked the language and thought it was good, but that also many YouTubers have verified that they had a secret meeting with some of the biggest content creators and promised them a kind of sweetheart deal where you will pay a smaller percentage of your gross revenue if you get on board, tell everybody else how great and wonderful this is. Thankfully, both people internal and external leak this stuff because it is garbage. So yeah, the provisions would have upended the business model of many other publishing companies, including Paizo, who makes Pathfinder and Starfinder, Kobold Press, Green Ronin, and others, as well as all the smaller independent creators, wondering if they even get to keep ownership of their works going forward. And then Wizards was silent. And then Wizards got even dumber by freaking giving the worst explanation ever. And that's when the fans of Dungeons & Dragons finally did the right thing. And they went to D&D Beyond, Wizards' online platform where they make a ton of money, and began to cancel their subscriptions. We understand that it's a terrible version because this was seen as an attempt to cancel that bleeding, which is reported to be in the tens of thousands of users. We know that tens of thousands of people have already canceled or trying to cancel their D&D Beyond subscription. Because unlike, say, Netflix, where you just hit a button and then the Netflix will stop charging your card. And, say, okay, we'll send you stuff if you ever want to come back, or we can have deals for you. But your last payment is good through like 2 weeks from tomorrow. You're going to watch Netflix until then. You can always log in and change your mind. That's how most subscriptions work. D&D Beyond's team was cut so badly as a cost-saving measure and as a way to discourage you from doing this, that Dungeons & Dragons and Wizards of the Coast make you log a support ticket to cancel your subscription. I'm not kidding. And right now, they've confirmed that there's at least 5 digits worth of support tickets already backed up. Tens of thousands of people. My God. All language and requirements in the draft OGL were disruptive to creators and not in support of our core goals of protecting and cultivating an inclusive play environment and limiting the OGL to TTRPGs. Do you see the pattern that we just went with? There are those buzzwords: disruptive, support, protecting, cultivating, inclusive play environment. What the hell does that have to do with anything that we're talking? It's nice that you want anyone to play Dungeons & Dragons. It's also obvious. The more people who play, the more money you get. OGL has nothing to do with an inclusive play environment and everything to do with Dungeons & Dragons trying to dominate the tabletop industry based on their popularity and their new CEO's belief at Wizards of the Coast that she thinks she can milk it for all it's worth. Then we compounded things by being silent for too long. We hurt fans and creators, which more frequent and clear communications could have prevented so much of this. There's a D&D Shorts channel on YouTube. I highly recommend that you watch it because this guy is on point. He's on fire. And my God, he has pointed out that Wizards of the Coast has been terrible about their communications for years. So this is not a surprise. Now, this is between my cough and the stupidity I'm looking at, I can't speak. Now, just last week, we covered this on the channel. This quote right here. You're going to hear people say that they won and we lost because making your voices have heard forced us to change our plans. Those people will only be half right. They won, and so did we. No. We have charged the camp of the Wizards of the Coast, who are apparently the evil, big, bad endgame boss that we didn't even know about, and the fans won. The post was not signed by anybody specific and was seen as one of the stupidest corporate BS speaks in recent history. This new apology reads more like a full retreat from the attempted brinksmanship. Hell yes. You deserve clarity and stability. Now, they're saying they're going to release a new version on January 20th and that they'll have a survey offered to give feedback. But, again, D&D Shorts is reporting that these guys don't literally only have surveys so that you will not complain on Reddit and everywhere else. And that this is actually may not even be able to help. Now, he is at least saying the right things, that no matter what form it takes, that it's not going to impact fan-created video content, miniatures, accessories, content for virtual tabletop platforms like Roll20 and Foundry VTT, and that the previously created content ownership of that content going forward. You will control your own content with no license-back requirements. But the industry and the fans are not listening. You've gone nuclear. You can't unring that bell. Paizo is already saying that they want to create a new license fully outside the control of Wizards and Hasbro, and even set up like a charity foundation to run it, which is kind of amazing, actually. And possibly what might need to happen just so that Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro cannot do this. Now, I looked at Hasbro stock, and it's dropped a lot in the last year. This whole thing is coming about, not just the Dungeons and Dragons garbage, but even the overprinting of Magic cards, which some people are saying. Because Daddy Hasbro, like a lot of video game developers, got used to all the money during the pandemic, and while they're still making good money, they ain't making the best money that they were pandemic when we were all stuck inside. Obvious, I could go see family and friends and go for jogs and go see movies in theaters now. Of course I'm spending less money and time online. I'm a nerd. I'm still spending a lot of money and time online. It's just less. And so Hasbro had told Wizards, see what you can do about raising revenue. Their new CEO is, we mentioned her name. I don't feel like going to grab it because I'm really unhappy with her. Has said, I think it's under-monetized. And she talks about loot boxes and all kinds of ways she can twist that money out of your pocket for your fun. So here's what I hope actually happens. I hope, I can't even look at it anymore. I'm so mad. I can't even look at this guy. I hope that Ubisoft gets it together and actually starts releasing good variety of games instead of chasing trends stupidly anymore. I hope that Wizards of the Coast, I have a lot less faith in them. I hope that they actually do treat people right and fix this. But I think Ubisoft has a chance to turn around. Wizards does not. Guys, Wizards of the Coast is not going to be able to pull this out, I don't think. I don't like saying it, but I think it's true. They are just going to have to go down with the ship because that is what's going to happen. I think that Paizo, I think that Kobold Press, I think several other major publishers and companies in the tabletop space are going to come together. They're going to come up with a really cool framework of how tabletop games, and they're going to make it open for everyone. No one's going to be able to claim it, and that way you could just use that one. I've even seen Critical Role be curiously silent, but not in a way that I think Critical Role's got a lot of money invested in these guys, but if they're nerds and gamers like they say they are, they're probably not happy about anything. Remember, Critical Role was brought into a room probably because one of the biggest creators of Dungeons & Dragons and told, hey, we're going to charge everybody else 20% of their revenue, but maybe we'll only do 12 for you. But that's still money out of Critical Role's pocket. So why would they be happy about that when they're like, yeah, we see how much money you're making. Instead of releasing more books and more miniatures and better stuff and great new things, we don't feel like working very hard. We just want to take your money. So guys, let me know in the comments below what you think. Who do you think is worse so far this week? Ubisoft or Wizards of the Coast? Did I miss a company maybe that should have been up here on my little wall of shame? We can, if enough news happens, we can have a special episode. But guys, let me know down below. And even though these companies control some of the games, they don't control all of the games. So play more games, because games are awesome and you deserve awesome. Have a great evening.